So welcome to our online webinar. I see that the people are joining. Just giving you some
Bien, veo que la
time
gente se está conectando. Les daremos un tiempo porque tenemos muchas inscripciones y muchas personas interesadas. Y les daré unos segundos para darle la posibilidad de unirse.
Hey, welcome to our online seminar.
Bienvenidos a nuestro seminario online, el futuro de la orientación profesional en los SPE. Y el año pasado realizamos una serie de seminarios hasta finales de 2024. La Asociación Mundial de Servicios Públicos de Empleo está trabajando con el Centro Internacional para Políticas Públicas. Hemos tenido una tasa de respuesta enorme con 48 agencias de servicio de empleo público y el informe se publicará esta semana. Yo soy Nicole Cloves y trabajo para la asociación, soy el secretariado de la asociación de los SPE. El seminario será el día de hoy en inglés, pero como siempre tenemos interpretación al español. And just click on the little globe on the bottom of the Zoom window to choose. The seminar is being recorded, so you can share it later with your colleagues that have been missing out on the live session. That is not a problem. And I also ask you, because the presentation that will be held today will be held in English, but if you want to see the presentation either French or Spanish, then please, there is a little resources button below also that you can click on and that you can find also the presentation. I can also put them in the chat later, but just for your convenience, you could open the presentations already from the resources button. I see already that there is a hand raised, but anyway, all microphones are muted today. So if you have any questions, you have the opportunity to ask questions in the chat during the presentations, and we will then collect them later. And if we have remaining questions, we will answer them in an email format later with a complete conclusion and a complete summary of today's webinar. So setting up all the technicalities, I would like to move on to our speakers of the day, because we have speakers from different organizations, which is one of my colleagues, Ms. Amandine Monnier. She's the Executive Secretary at the World Association of Public Employment Services, and Ms. Serena Hopkins, who is the Chair of the International Center for Career Development and Public Policy, and also the Executive Director of the Canadian Career Development Foundation, as well as Professor Tristan Hooley, who is Professor of Careers Education at the University of Derby. And Tristan and his team have also been concluding the survey and have been conducting that with the University of Derby. And last but not least, we have also Ms. Vilma Mostajnic with us. Vilma is the head of the International Cooperation Department of the Croatian Employment Services of Croatia. And the Croatian PES is a valued member of the WAPES community, and they have also participated in the survey and will tell us today about career guidance in their PES, and precisely about lifelong career guidance centers in Croatia. So without any further ado, I would like to give over to my colleague, Ms. Amandine Monnier and Ms. Serena Hopkins for the welcoming words. Over to you both.
Thank you very much, Nicole. It's a great pleasure to see you all and to start this new year with this very important topic on career guidance, because it is a key component of labor market employment. And we are really happy within WAPES to have collaborated with such great experts on the topics, and very pleased that you are also very numerous today to attend this webinar. So a very warm thank you. And to go deeper into the subject that it's all of interest of you, I will give the floor to Ms. Serena Hopkins right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Amandine. On behalf of the International Center for Career Development and Public Policy, I want to say a big thank you to you in the audience for caring about this important topic. Thank you to WAPES for being our valued partner, and a big thank you to the teams at WAPES and ICCDPP and University of Derby who created the survey, analyze the data, and produce this report. At ICCDPP, we have a real interest in promoting policy dialogue and evidence-based policy solutions, and this report could not be more timely. So I hope that you enjoy this webinar and look forward to the discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Serena and Amandine, for your very warm welcoming words. And also a big thank you and applause to the WAPES community, since they were the ones that have been filling out the survey in a timely manner, and without that, this wouldn't have been possible. So a big thank you also to all our members that have been filling out and have been contributing so graciously. So really very great opportunity to collect some data. And I'm very curious, and I think that's everyone that is in the audience today, to hear about the results and to see what career guidance and public employment services the future looks like and the current status. So I'm giving the word over to you, Tristan, since we are all very curious to hear about the survey results.
Great. Okay. Well, yes. So I'm Tristram Hooley. I'm Professor of Career Education at the University of Derby. I've been working on this with my colleagues, Gazel and Terry, who I think are both here, and also with the ICCDPP team and with WAPES. So it's been a very collaborative endeavour. But what I'm going to try and do is very quickly run through some of the findings of this and just tell you a little bit more. As we say, there will be a report that will be out in the next little while. So yeah, if we just start that up. Great. Okay. So yes, we're going to talk a little bit about career guidance in PES. So let's go on to the next slide. So we've got a new report. The survey was conducted mainly in October and November. We got 48 PES worldwide to respond to it. So that's 59% of the WAPES membership. So that's a good response. I mean, always with these things, we would have liked more, but I think we did well. And so we've got some reasonable sense that this might be representative of what's going on. So let's go on. So we break down by region. We've got a very strong response from Europe, but also responses from all of the different regions that WAPES is organised into. So we feel fairly confident about this. I mean, you know, that it gives us some kind of idea of what the different countries and what the different regions are like. I will break down some of the key messages in there. There's a bit more detail on your region in the report. So yeah, let's go on. So, okay. Our first question is, well, how are services delivered? So, I mean, there's some diversity in this, but the most common model of delivery is a single national service. So a public employment service, that one per country, and with most or all services delivered by government. And we were a little bit surprised about that, particularly in some places because we think that outsourcing and the use of subcontractors to deliver that is becoming more popular and more used. But it still seems that the dominant model is for a government-owned service with a sort of single service for a country. We also have seen another trend, which is the sort of localization and regionalization of trends, or some kind of blend of the two. So let's go on. Yeah, to the next slide. Yeah. So we asked people what were the most important policy goals for their public employment service, and we asked people to rank these 9, and we got some quite interesting results here. So if we look at what people are thinking are the most important, the typical public employment service worldwide exists to support national labour market policy, particularly in the matching of labour market supply and demand. So perhaps not surprising. And then to promote employment opportunities, but also to support the transition of young people from education to employment. And I think that the overall, one of the findings is that an awful lot of the public employment services have got a very strong role in supporting young people to transition into the labour market. And yet that is, of course, not the function of all public employment services, but nonetheless, it was one of the most important ones. So that's what people are trying to achieve in terms of their policy goals. So if we go on to the next one. We've then got the most important programme aims. So these are kind of a level below the policy aims. What is it that everyone wants? What is it that everyone's looking to do? Sorry, I'll just move that out of the way. So practically, services are spending their time finding employment for people as quickly as possible, placing people in training programs or other active labour market measures, and to help people make career, education and employment decisions. And I've highlighted at the bottom, this was the least likely programme aim for public employment services, which is to support long-term career planning. And I think this starts to get to one of the questions of what is the difference between normal public employment service work and career guidance. So by career guidance, we're talking about, there's definitely a big overlap between sort of normal public employment service work, but I think we're starting to talk about forms of skilled helping, professional help that people might be able to access within a public employment service that will help them to make learning and work choices. And I think some of that might be quite short-term matching, but I think if we were thinking career guidance was a really big part of public employment services, we would also expect to see the support for longer term career planning sort of creeping up this list. So let's go on. So who are the user groups here? So we asked for sort of most common and then the largest groups. And so most public employment services are supporting young people, I've said already. Also employers, and I think that's very important. Most of the public employment services are supporting employers, so not just working with individuals, but also working on the demand side of the labour market as well to sort of meet employer needs and understand employers' needs and so on. And then long-term unemployed adults, which I think is probably the group that we would most expect to see highly here, and various other groups. And in terms of the largest groups, youth, long-term unemployed adults, short-term unemployed adults are the biggest groups, with employers falling down because they're not so numerous, but they are important, which is why we put both lists in here. What I've highlighted here, I think again is interesting, is services were much less likely to answer that they worked with employed adults looking to change jobs and careers and people at risk of losing their jobs. Now, clearly, there's quite a strong rationale for services to work with these groups, because with the kind of rationale of prevention is better than cure, it's easier to help someone move from a job into another job before they've been made unemployed or before they've lost that job. So to me, that's a kind of slightly disappointing finding here, but one that again I think speaks to the value that career guidance, a stronger amount of career guidance could bring to public employment services, would be a stronger focus on these groups of employed people. So let's move on. So what do they do? So we now sort of honed in on career guidance activities. What kinds of things are PES doing? Actually, all of the things we asked about, there was a substantial number of people involved, or substantial number of services involved in. So we see very commonly services organising group activities to enhance job search efficacy, so helping people to get jobs in groups, or by providing them self-help information, or providing them individual support. So those three are the strongest things. They're the most likely kinds of career guidance activities. So very much focused around immediate job search, finding jobs, filling in CVs and so on. And then the things at the bottom where we perhaps might be interested to see what's not being done so often. Still, 40% of services are involved in the validation of prior learning and skills, so somewhat more technical kinds of activity that are about actually helping people to validate and accredit learning that they might have done perhaps in another country if they're a migrant, or perhaps in a work-based form of learning that's not been accredited. And so that's an interesting area for development, perhaps. Psychometric assessment, various kinds of skills and formal assessment. These are areas that are being only done by about half of services. But then we also see these ones around career planning that are a little bit less popular. So individual and group activities around career planning. So let's move on now. So what's the sort of things that people starting to notice as trends in service provision? Well, we're seeing the provision of intensive counselling to vulnerable groups, self-help, as being, people providing more web-based solutions, AI, these kinds of things. Work with schools is another kind of growing trend. Tiered services, so sort of careful triaging of people and sending people to different kinds of levels of service depending on need. Then sort of multi-service provision, one-stop shops, bringing together a range of public services. These are all trends that a lot of our services were reporting. So let's move on. So what are some of the biggest challenges? Well, it came out very clearly. Services have got some difficulties in finding the right people that they need. They're looking to either employ qualified staff or train qualified staff. Obviously, there are some more sort of structural issues here as well, like lack of job opportunities for job seekers, which clearly limits what a public employment service can do. But the top ones are really, if we were going to move into this area of providing career guidance, and if we were going to do it better, we need to find more people. So let's move on. Okay, so what makes it successful? That was one of the questions that we asked. So what are some of the key components of successful implementation of career guidance in PES? So what we heard was really this is about policy. So if the biggest problem that people are facing in kind of practical delivery is a problem of staffing, of finding skilled people to do the work, the problem of sort of fully implementing career guidance in public employment services is essentially a problem of policy support, so that people want government labour market policy that explicitly references career guidance. If we don't actually say this is something that the public employment service should do, then it's very difficult to allocate resources to it. And so you then need legislation which establishes PES, which again mentions career guidance, and PES policy that references career guidance. So a lot of this stuff is really about embedding the need for career guidance in policy, so that it's not just the kind of experimental intervention that the public employment service is trying out, but it's a requirement and part of the entitlement of users that they can access career guidance as part of their engagement with the public employment service. So let's move on. So I think in summary, I try and sort of draw together some of these findings and say, well, most public employment services are organised as national services with staff being employed directly by government. However, outsourcing of provision and localisation are also widespread. PES are strongly focused on labour market policy and make use of active labour market approaches. So this again focuses us particularly on unemployed and out of work people and trying to re-engage them in the labour market, rather than a more holistic understanding of what labour market policy might be. These policy priorities are then translated into service aims, which focus on helping people to find employment as quickly as possible. And the key users of these services are young people making their initial transition to the labour market, and then unemployed adults. Career guidance has got a strong footprint in public employment services globally. But when we look at the kinds of activities that are being described as career guidance, we see that they're of a particular type. They tend to be at the kind of more short-term and sort of lower end of sophistication of career guidance activities. So what we see is lots of matching services, support services to help people get and find and keep work. What we don't see is so much things like outreach to people who are perhaps being made redundant or looking to change skills. We don't see long-term career planning so commonly. These are the areas where we might think there's room to expand and develop the kind of career guidance activities that are offered. Some of the key trends include the provision of self-help guidance, the provision of intensive counselling to vulnerable groups, and supporting schools' career guidance provision. And again, this focus with the young people, so even reaching back into the school system, I think is interesting and is not something that it was one of the things that perhaps surprised me a little bit about this, was how prevalent the focus on young people and then schools was. Finding and training career guidance staff is one of the biggest delivery challenges within PES. And so we need to think about why that is, how we can improve training, how we can improve the availability of staff, and perhaps how we can train up existing PES staff to be qualified career guidance professionals. And then finally, I think that effective delivery of career guidance services is strongly reliant on government support. It needs to be referenced in policy and supported and resourced appropriately if it's going to be successful. So I think it's important to be clear that this is not just something that exists as a kind of flavour of service within the public employment services. It needs to be kind of strongly identified in policy and then supported accordingly. I think that's everything from me, is it? Move on. Is that yes? So I'll finish there. I think we'll take questions later. Is that right? As part of the panel. So, but yes, hopefully some of that's been of interest to people.
Thanks so much, Tristan, for presenting great insights of the survey report and the survey itself, the results, presenting some key components and data, and priorities, and successful implementation of public employment services. Yes, as you said already, Tristan, I encourage you all, especially our members and others that might have questions, to put them in the chat to have a lively discussion later. So please put them in the chat in between. I see already one or two questions here, so please don't hesitate if you have more questions on the data. And so shifting from the data, really from the theoretical side now to the operational level of public employment services, I'm very happy to give the floor now over to Wilma, who will be speaking about the Croatian Employment Service and their lifelong career guidance systems. So thank you so much, Wilma, for presenting today, and the floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Vilma Mostahinic, and on behalf of the Croatian PES, actually I'm very pleased to give you a presentation today. The objective of my presentation is to inform you about the Croatian Public Employment Service good practice, CISOC. This is a one-stop shop, or as we call it, Lifelong Career Guidance Center. Could you please let me first provide you with some information about Croatian Employment Service. So in this slide, you can see that the work of the Croatian Employment Service is organized through central office, which is based in the capital of Zagreb, 22 regional centers and offices, 99 local offices, and 17 lifelong career guidance centers, which make part of the Croatian Employment Service. So the services are provided in a total of 139 locations, all with the aim of getting as close as possible to our clients. So the activities of the lifelong career guidance in the Croatian PES are focused on the education and training measures, which we do today through the education voucher systems, which we have implemented since 2022 as a response to low education participation in Croatia. Then informing and counseling selection, what we do for employers, and prevention prevention activities with pupils. We divided these career guidance services to face-to-face services and online services and tools. Next slide, please. So as I have already said, the TISOC is actually a central place for the provision of comprehensive lifelong career guidance services to all citizens, pupils, students, employed and unemployed persons. And up to now, we have 17 centers in Croatia. What is interesting that we developed these centers through the project of the European Union, through the EPA project, and we started with that in 2013. And up to now, we have developed 17 lifelong career guidance services. We still do it through the National Resilience and Recovery Plan, also the EU project. Up to 2026, we plan to open another 5 centers. So in total, we will have 22 of them to cover whole Croatia regionally. And the aims of opening these centers are improving employability, developing career management skills and competencies of our users, decrease long-term unemployment, and decrease labor demand and supply mismatch in the labor market. Next slide, please. So in this slide, you can see how we deliver these services through CISOC, because this is a differentiated service delivery model. And we call it actually funnel. So this is a format of funnel. What does it mean? That it means that the self-services are provided to the majority of clients. And these are actually e-services and brief assisted services. And they are actually provided online. Here we have e-tools like self-assessment questionnaires. Then we have a labor market information system, statistics online, and job exchange portal, in which our users can upload their CVs and in such a way be visible to our employers. Then we have assisted services. They are provided in cooperation with our counselors. So these are individual or group counseling services. Then we have some thematic workshops for career management skills, and recently added online workshop for users. The third part is are tailored services, and these services are mainly individual counseling services delivered to the citizens who need intensive support in making decisions about their careers. For example, students and risks, then also students with health and social problems, learning difficulties, and etc. Yeah, next slide, please. So who are the main target groups? Tristram already mentioned young people, unemployed, employed persons. Yes, and these are all actually our main target groups. So we have mainly as regards target groups, the main focus is on youth, so young persons, and then unemployed persons, hard to place persons, employed persons interested in career change, but also primary and secondary pupils, pupils at risk, students with health and social problems, students and graduates, and employers, as well as public and private sector partners. Next slide, please. So here you can see CISOC online services. These services are, as I have already said, are provided online, like career guidance services. For example, via new CISOC portal, which we have since last year. And at this CISOC portal, all our services can be seen. Then labor market information with statistics online, and My Choice, which is a careers guidance software with an electronic questionnaire. Based on the user's answers, it suggests the most suitable occupations, and information is provided there for each occupation. And then we have also self-assessment questionnaires where the persons can fill in, and they help to determine the person's characteristics that are important for adaptation to different positions in various business situations, and results give an approximation of person's personality traits needed in the labor market and associated with work. Next slide, please. So I have already mentioned the work of our counselors in individual activities, but also in group counseling activities. So what do counselors in CISOC do? So they provide appropriate level of support in career management, yes, by providing the skills and competencies, then help in career planning and choice making. They also do various workshops, presentations, and lectures for our users. They design and deliver self-guided information materials, yes, for education, vocation, career, and labor market. And they put these materials on our page, My CISOC. They help with computer program for career guidance, My Choice, and self-assessment questionnaires. And what is very important is that these qualified career guidance counselors need trainings to improve their skills and competencies. Next slide, please. So these are actually the lessons learned because, and the future plans, of course, because we have learned a lot through these projects that in which we have implemented these lifelong career guidance centers. One of them is the partnership, which is very important in delivering our services. So in the CISOC centers, we have the partnerships, which partnership agreements. And these partnership agreements we have concluded with other key stakeholders in the labor market, either schools, universities, but there are also training institutions and, of course, NGOs. Then what is also important, that is, in order to cooperate with partners, recognizable long-term experience in cooperation with educational sector is needed, and we really cooperate with educational sector. The CISOC centers are dislocated from the PES premises, and therefore they are accessible to all users, but they are also part of PES. Then creating and planning services according to the assessed needs of the specific target groups, which is very important because we also create these services according to the needs. And for the online services, the comprehensive ICT support is used, like databases, tools, and instruments. Up to now, the satisfaction rate of our users was very high. It was more than 95% of clients stating that they are satisfied or very satisfied with CISOC services. So what are the main challenges and future plans? These are to establish new CISOC services, but also to enhance existing partnerships, especially with employers and youth centers, because there are more and more partners needed. Then to improve the outreach of the inactive persons, because we do not have inactive persons in our databases of the Croatian PES. So in order to reach them, we have to improve the outreach. Once we identify the inactive persons persons and we identify them through the cooperation with other institutions, then we can work on the outreach of them. Then we have to raise awareness and visibility of CISOC services, but also all career guidance services, and assure resources needed. So we do not have enough CISOC counselors. So we have to attract them to work for us. They are mainly psychologists or pedagogues who work in CISOC centers. Then we have to do the monitoring, analysis, and report, and further develop and modernize services. We have just started with delivering online courses and workshops for our clients, and we hope that in future we will develop more services like that. As well, we have to deliver trainings to career guidance counselors to improve their skills. Next slide, please. So what is very important in Croatia, but also in other countries, are the partnerships. And one of the most important points is also the partnership and cooperation with relevant stakeholders. Either they are private, public, NGOs, especially in the areas of education, employment, and social policies. So the cooperation among relevant stakeholders is important to deliver quality career guidance services, and this cooperation is important at national as well as regional level. Up to now, we have concluded 476 agreements on cooperation. In the future, we plan to set up the system of data exchange between education and employment, and there are other relevant institutions. We have already signed agreements with Croatian Pension Fund and social welfare centers to identify inactive persons, and we will continue with that also with the education sector. So that's all I want to say on this topic. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wilma. Talking about the lifelong career guidance in Croatia and all the services that you're offering, also especially for different age group customers. And yes, a couple questions. There are already a couple questions to you and Tristram especially. But I'm giving the word over to you from here, Serena, for the discussion part. Serena, you're muted, I think so.
Thank you. Yep. Thanks, Nicole. Questions are coming in fast and furious, so that's wonderful. Keep them coming. I wanted to start with a broad question before we get into the nitty-gritty of the report. I mean, WAPES have members from all around the world, from every continent, and those countries have really diverse cultures, really diverse labor market realities. And I'm curious, sometimes reports like this tend to emphasize a bit more of a Eurocentric or Americentric approach. And maybe to broaden our perspective in this discussion, I'd be curious, maybe from Amandine and Nicole from WAPES, some comments on some, if you've encountered some very different approaches to public employment services that maybe would sit outside of the more Eurocentric or Americentric perspective.
Thank you, Serena. I will start with this one and then give the floor to Nicole to complement. But just to let you know that, WAPES, the World Association of Public Employment Services, has 80 members covering 5 geographical regions, which provides a very interesting overview of very different approaches on all matter of labor, employment, market policies, and career guidance. Mali, for example, with a population of around 20 million people, of which 47% are less than 15 years old, with an also Mali annual growth rate of around 3%. So this West African country is experiencing strong demographic pressure on the labor market. And they told us also they have around 300,000 new job seekers every year entering the market. And even if they are doing mostly one-to-one counseling, like in Europe, they are also trying new approach And for example, in November last year, they tried to give a national job fair with very broad career guidance and counseling especially for youth. So I think it's something we could mention. Nicole, sorry, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. It differs, Serena. Yes, you are absolutely right. And yes, of course, there's different approaches on how persons that are advice seeking or job seeking within a PES, how they really approach us and how their service is then delivered. So we just recently had last year actually a presentation by our members from Cambodia. They have an estimated population of around 17 million. And their median age is around 25.6 years, which was quite interesting. So a very, very young population. And in order to provide counseling service to this very young population, they offer counseling services in 3 shopping malls in Cambodia. And they very often have not only this face-to-face counseling sessions that we have, very often in the European region, that we can see that they also have these very huge, big job fairs where they inform then hundreds of people at the same time. On the other side, we have our Japanese WAPES members. They have been presenting, I think, also last year, November, for our WAPES community and our friends. And they have rather a more aging society rather than the young society compared to Cambodia. And in their Japanese offices, they offer lifelong active participation support. They have 300 of these offices where they provide comprehensive support and career life redesign and team support for senior job seekers and also older job seekers. So counseling can really differ from the style that it's been given to and differ really on the regional setup, depending also on the framework of the country.
Great, thank you. Thanks for helping us bring that broader lens into the discussion. So maybe the next question I would direct to Tristram, maybe. Tristram, you hinted at sort of the tension between the quick movement into employment versus more of a guidance approach. Can you say a little bit more, unpack that a little bit, contrasting the 2 approaches?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a couple of levels you can think about this on. So I suppose the first level is where rapid movement into the labour market is linked to benefits or benefit conditionality, and where the public employment service is essentially an instrument of that kind of desire to move people off of benefit or unemployment status into employed status as quickly as possible. And I think in that case there are some really important tensions with career guidance work, because I think in career guidance, where we have trained professionals who kind of work to some sort of ethical standards and so on, the aim of that work is to work on behalf of the individual rather than essentially on behalf of the government trying to save money and so on. And I think we also can make a strong economic argument that the economic situation is not always best served by people rapidly cycling into kind of any work that they can find, and rather that people would be better to spend a little bit more time finding the place where their skills can be best used, or even potentially in developing their skills through some kind of training. So I think there's a level in which the objectives of public employment services, as we saw in this survey, sometimes can be in tension with career guidance. And I think there's another level, which is a level of skill, where I think it is not to underestimate the skill that's involved in supporting somebody who's been out of work for a long while to find a job and so on, and maximize their kind of position within the labour market. I think working with people who are thinking over a longer time scale than just how do I complete this application and get a job also raises other kinds of skills. We need professionals with different kinds of training and so on, and also like the ability to work into employers and various other kinds of forms of work. So I think there's a sort of an objective level on which there are tensions, and then there's a kind of skill level on which some of these public employment services may be providing some career guidance services, but at the lower end of the skill that we would expect to see. So I think probably both of those are going on in our data.
You've touched on a number of things that I want to come back to you on, but I'm gonna turn to Vilma now. There were a number of comments made around the efficacy of career guidance and the importance of it. And thanks so much for sharing your best practice in Croatia. I wondered if you could speak a little bit to the benefits that you're seeing in Croatia as a result of this well-developed system.
Well, the benefits actually, I can start that career guidance in Croatia has been developed a long time ago, since 1931, because then the first center of career guidance was opened in Zagreb, and then we saw many benefits since that time already. But these lifelong career guidance centers were developed on top of that. So in order to provide services to all inactive persons, and not only the persons who and the unemployed persons who are in the PES database. So this is actually the main benefit, to reach all inactive persons, as this area of our users has enlarged very much. So we do not work as a PES only with the unemployed persons, but we have recently started to work very much with employed persons, like job changers, then with the persons who would like to change their career, then also the students, the pupils, the graduates as well. And we started to work very much with all inactive persons in order to reach them and to include them into the labor market. I would say these are the most benefits, but also in the work with employers, it is very important to help small and medium enterprises, because they do not have HR departments, really equipped HR departments. They worked with less staff than big companies, and therefore in this area we are very helpful, because we can tailor the activities according to their needs and help them to attract the right persons to the job vacancies, and match them with the job vacancies. Yes.
I see that Tristram is keen to jump in here too.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that I think the kind of thing that Vilma's describing is the sort of thing I've seen in more case study work that we've done. So it may not be the norm. It may not be the norm or the median sort of set of behaviours for public employment services, but some of the best public employment services are doing this kind of more holistic work with people who are in employment or who are leaving the education system, and then also this kind of deep work that you're doing with employers to work on the demand side. And so I think this is all very good practice that we should really try and build on and develop. And career guidance, I think, is right in the middle of that, with partly with the kind of more professionalized staffing that it requires.
Absolutely. There were a number of questions around how do you measure the impact of career guidance. And Tristram, you talked about the need to have legislation and make it a right. Well, we need to convince governments of that. They're not just going to do that out of the goodness of their hearts. So can you say a little bit about the case for career guidance?
Well, so I mean, I think the case, I mean, you can make a number of cases, but there's a sort of an economic case, which is around ensuring that people have skills that are well aligned with the opportunities that are available. I think you can also make, cases that are more on a social or social justice level, where you might say, well, people who've been through career guidance, you're also giving people access to information and knowledge about the labour market they otherwise might not have. You might also be informing them about their rights, encouraging them to explore the possibility of moving towards decent work and so on. And some of the work that I know the ILO have done in sort of low and middle income countries has tended to focus on this idea of career guidance as an engine for formalization. So I think there's lots of cases we can make for it. In terms of evidence, we didn't ask a question about that, but it is something I've looked at elsewhere. I mean, there are lots of national, evaluations of public employment services. There are also, I think, there's some quite good evidence that I reviewed for a paper I was doing on active labour market policies. And active labour market policies aren't a kind of direct, they're not exactly the same as career guidance, and it does move us into this position where we're mainly talking about unemployed workers, but there's certainly some overlap between the two. And I think we have got reasonably good evidence about what works in public employment services in terms of active labour market policies. So I think we have this is not a kind of completely barren desert in terms of evidence. I think we have got some evidence which does tell us some of what works, and it is some of these things that we're talking about. I mean, it's more intensive interventions. It's sort of trying to decouple things from benefit conditionality. It's trying to work in a preventative way as well as in waiting until people become long-term unemployed. I think there are a number of lessons that we could probably draw out. There's probably another webinar that we could do sometime.
I think so, yeah. Well, we can't leave this discussion without touching on the issue of qualification and training. It was really the number one challenge identified in the survey, finding people who are qualified. And so really this could be for Vilma or Tristram, but I'm curious on your perspectives on why it's such a challenge, and what are some examples of some good solutions when it comes to making sure that there are qualified folks delivering these complex services. So maybe Vilma first, if you have comments on that.
Yes, there were some questions I also seen about this certification for career guidance counselors. Yeah. Actually, we do not have certifications for career guidance counselors in Croatia. It should be on the level of the government that they can be certified, but we haven't done this yet. But these are mainly highly educated persons, so they are either, I said, psychologists and pedagogues, because their work with clients, in their work with clients, we see good results. They are open, talkative, they have motivation in that, they can know how to combat the stress and to be in stressful situations. And also they have will to learn and to be motivated somehow in this kind of in these areas, yeah, of let's say very, very stressful situations, working with clients and pupils and inactive persons, especially in how to motivate them, how to bring them to work and actually to the labor market, how to show them and how to improve their skills in such a way. And therefore we do different workshops, how to present yourself to employer, how to do your interview with employer, how to improve your skills, etc. These are the reasons why we think this should be highly motivated persons for this work. And as far for the you mentioned the trainings, we have trainings on a yearly basis, one training per year, but we would like to develop more trainings for them and online trainings, because they have a lot of work and they work every day with clients, and it's difficult for them to come to the trainings to other to Zagreb or, for example, to other towns. So we think this online education trainings would be a very, very good solution for them to improve their skills. Yeah.
Tristram, what would you add?
I mean, there's a very high variety of qualifications that are out there, and different countries approach this in different ways. And so some it sounds like Vilma's sort of example is you tend to employ fairly well qualified people, so people who are graduates or whatever, and then train them on the job for the specifics of what they're doing. I think in other countries you'll have situations where there is some more formal qualification in career guidance or counselling, and then it will be arguable about what level that should be, whether it should be a degree level or master's level or whatever. I think all of these things are possible. I think it's also worth thinking about how you structure your public employment service and whether you have a sort of specialist career guidance function within it, in which is a kind of second order function where people are referred to that function. In which case, I would hope that would be pretty highly qualified, that they would be your most qualified people. But that doesn't mean it's not a good idea to train all of your frontline staff who are working with users of the service in some career guidance techniques. So you might have people who are perhaps pre-degree level of qualification, who are seeing people, who are helping them to fill in job applications or apply for jobs or understand their benefits entitlements. Those people should have access to training. And I think what we would hope is that there's also some kind of ladder of skill where they can move up once they get good at that. If they've got an aptitude for it, can move up to become a sort of fully qualified career guidance professional. So there are lots of different ways to do this. I don't think we would say there's only one way, but they all involve learning some things, and often qualifications are helpful in achieving that.
Thanks, Tristram. I have so many other questions from the audience, and that doesn't even touch on all the questions I have for you, but my time's up. So clearly we need to do this again. But thanks so much for a great discussion, and I'm going to pass it back to Nicole.
Yeah, thank you so much, Serena, and thank you so much for Wilma and Tristram really willing to present this today. And we think we can all agree that it's very important to focus on a holistic approach to train staff and improve skills, and then in the end creating a very valuable experience for the customer that comes to the PES in the end. So thank you so much really for taking part in this online seminar. I think it was a really great opportunity to discover career guidance and public employment services worldwide. So I would also really warmly thank our speakers today and the presenters, and really on the great collaboration we had on the survey, and especially again to our members really for working hard on the survey and making these results really happening. That was really a great opportunity. So the survey will be released this week, so please stay updated on our website. Thank you so much also to the interpreters that are really working hard also during this interpretation. Sometimes we are really fast or slow, but thank you so much for that. And also big thank you for the participation today with an incredible number of registration and participation. Thank you so much. I really hope you've enjoyed this and learned something useful. And I would like to invite you also, after ticking off, to complete the satisfaction survey in the end, since there's always something that we can learn from you in order to improve. I would also like to take this opportunity to announce some upcoming webinars, and I will put them in the chat, but usually I don't know, but my links are never working, but I'm putting them still in the chat. So please go on the WAPES website, because we have another webinar coming up this Wednesday talking about the public employment service of Mali, one of our African members. And they will be presenting their public employment services. Maybe this might be interesting to you. Again, thanks to all of you, and I'm wishing you a wonderful day ahead of you, afternoon or night, wherever you might be on this planet. Bye-bye.